Oh, and I didn't actually say welcome on behalf of Southern Black Girls. For you all don't know me, I am Joy Webb, the engagement manager for the team, and we are excited to have you. So I will not delay. I will let everything happen the way it's supposed to happen. So Crystal, take it away.
Thank you, Joy. Well, good afternoon, everybody, from a cloudy day here in Kernersville, North Carolina, which is where I'm located. I am so thrilled and honored to be here with you all today. I want to thank Joy specifically for asking me to be a part of the Sage Circle. I'm glad to be a part of a circle that is described as Sage because it's my intention to learn as much from you all, if not more, than just to share some of the things that I've experienced and have been thinking and talking about over the course of my career. Just to give you just a high level background about me, I am a not a born North Carolinian, but I was here like 5 minutes after my eyes opened. I was born in New York, but I have been living in North Carolina since before my first birthday. And I've never lived more than 20 miles from the place where I grew up. So I am right now in Kernersville, North Carolina, having grown up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I'm a proud graduate of Winston-Salem State University, go Rams. And I am a wife, a daughter, and a mom to two fur babies, my dog DJ and my cat Sinclair. You may get an opportunity to at least hear or see some of them because they have no respect for my business and my profession. And they tend to jump in on meetings uninvited. So you might get a chance to meet them, but and hopefully they'll keep themselves quiet during this time. I'll also just say that this is again an opportunity for all of us to learn and share together. This is what Joy explained to me what this group is about. So I encourage you all to jump in, speak up, let's talk. I created this beautiful presentation, but I'm more than happy to take that down if the discussion leads us in that direction. So feel free to jump right in, ask me questions. I'm going to be asking you all questions to guide this discussion. So don't be shy. Um, so with that, I'm going to try to work some tech magic and pull up this presentation about legacy. And while I'm doing that, I'll just ask the question. When you think of when you hear the word legacy, what comes to mind?
Family,
Good
money.
afternoon. My name is Erlene Rivers. When I heard of the word legacy, something that you're planning on leaving behind, something positive.
Something to leave behind, positive things to leave behind. You think about Joy, I heard you say family. What else? Anything else? Well, I'll share with you when I used to think about legacy, I was thinking about, okay, well, what does that mean when I'm not here anymore? It really is, for me, it was about, wow, I'm an only child. And interestingly enough, I'm married to an only child and we have no children. So that was always a big concern for me. When I start thinking about legacy is what's going to happen when I'm no longer here. What's going to happen to my mom and my family and my friends and my circle? What's going to happen? So all of those things come into play, and it can actually be, at least for me, it was a very daunting conversation to even partake in. Like, what when I'm not here, oh my gosh, there's so many things that, not that I'm the center of the universe, but there's so many things that I'm, involved in and care about. What is going to happen in the event that I'm no longer here? But then, and through my work and just through really thinking through, legacy is so much more than that, and that's what I want us to start thinking about today, especially as Black women, thinking about not just our legacy in terms of what we leave behind financially, but also thinking about legacy in thinking about legacy, like Erlene, like you were saying, in terms of just the positive things, all of the positive things that we leave behind.
Crystal, we can see part of your screen. I can't, it says create and collaborate. I see a version and
Oh, you can't see the whole thing? Hold
Yeah, I
on.
can't see the whole thing.
Let me see if I can get out of this. There's the Sage Circle. Let me stop. Actually, let me go here. You know what I might have to do is, can you see it from here?
Yep, we can see.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see.
So I think I'm gonna have to do it this way. So you'll get a little sneak preview of the slides as they come up, and then I'll just highlight them. This is from my iPad, so you'll just get a highlight when I move to the next screen.
Before you jump into all the things, I know that we did a little bit brief bio of who you were, but I know what you do. But I would love to share with the ladies where your background is, your history, like high level. You don't have to tell all the great things,
sure.
But just so they understand why you are speaking of legacy and where you're coming from that.
Sure. So my background is working with nonprofits. I just recently left my role after 25 years as head of philanthropic solutions at BNY Mellon Wealth Management, where I led all of our philanthropic strategy. And so I've been working with nonprofits and donors, talking about legacy, talking about philanthropy, helping them think through one, how to build engagement and support for their mission from the nonprofit side, but also talking to people like all of us about, okay, well, how do we want to leave a legacy specifically through philanthropy? So that's how Joy and I met, because I just recently, after leaving that role, started my own practice, True Crystal Consulting, working with nonprofits, but also joined a startup called Daylight Advisors, where we are specifically working to create a learning community for philanthropic advisors like Joy and others. So Joy and I met through that connection. And Joy is one of our inaugural Prismatic Fellows, who we're gonna, shoot into the stratosphere with her practice. So that's my background and how I come to have this legacy, came to start thinking about legacy in a different way. Thanks, Joy. One thing I will say that you should all know about me, other than what I've shared thus far, is that I love a good quote. And Maya Angelou is someone who, obviously we all know, but there's so many things that I've learned from her that have really helped guide my life in the way that I move through the world. And this quote, I have 6 tattoos, and if I was adventurous, I would go ahead and make this one the 7th, but there's a whole lot of words. But the words are very deep and meaningful, and this is how I guide my life. So my mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive, and to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. So this is my guiding mantra. And so when I think about legacy, especially the line about not just surviving, but to thrive, it's moving beyond just what we do day to day, but to embrace joy, and also to, convey that to other people through the way that we live our lives. And that is kind of the core of what legacy means. So if we want to get specific, the Oxford Dictionary defines legacy as either an amount of money or property left to somebody in a will. But they also have a second definition, which is the long-lasting impact of particular events, actions, etc., that take place in the past or of a person's life. And I think when I think about legacy, I think that's the definition that I want all of us to start thinking about. It's not just that first definition around, okay, what are we going to leave people when we're gone in terms of money or property, but how are we currently living, and the impact of how we are living our lives and the decisions that we make. How are they impacting the world around us? And so in thinking about legacy, yes, we need to think about all of the things, like what are the things, who's going to get the things, how much of the things work. But we also should be thinking about, how we move through the world and how that's going to leave an impact and an impression on not just those that we know, but, that butterfly effect of how we move how that's going to affect, people that we may not even be aware of. I don't know about you all, but my legacy, and thinking about my legacy, I always think about other people first. And what is, and how I think about, the things that I do and why I do what I do, and how I do them. I always think about other people first. But the reality is, there's a reason why they say put your mask on first, secure your mask before you help someone else on the plane. Because if you aren't able to take care of yourself and your needs, then you're not going to be able to, to help anybody else. So when thinking about your legacy, I always encourage women, especially, to think about themselves first. Not only, don't think about yourself only, but think about yourself first. What are the things in your life that you need to take care of in order so that you can bring your full, authentic, healthy self, and create an environment where your legacy is going to be beneficial for your circle around you. And then, of course, thinking about legacy, the who of, the people in your family, who, what, and I say family in, the folks related to you and the folks that aren't related to you, it might as well be. Who are the people in your life that you consider family? And then expanding that, okay, well, who are the people generally in your circle? Who are the people that, we would say, you're the people that you're going to pick up the phone, and if you haven't talked to them in 15 years, you can pick up the phone and know that you'll be there for them and they'd be there for you. Or the people in your life that had just hold a special meaning beyond just your family, considering your circle. And then expanding that to your community, thinking beyond just the people that like I mentioned earlier, but thinking to, the community at large. And by community, I mean, not just, neighborhood, I mean, community, all of the elements of your identity. I am a Black woman in the South. I consider my community beyond just, the folks that I see on Windfall Drive here in Kernersville. My community is the community of Black people. My community is a community of women. My community is a community of Southern women. All of those things play a part into how we consider our legacy. So I'll stop there, and I'll just ask the question: when you think about your community, who's in your circle, who's in your community, how would you describe your community in thinking about your legacy? And because I've got my screen up, I can't see. So Joy, I'm going to ask you if somebody's taken off mute, let me know.
I will, and you all can come off mute and talk. Please feel free. When I think about my circle, I think about my family, of course. I think about my friends that I grew up with. I think about some of my sorority sisters. I think about some of my college best friends. Because we say family, because, we have been together. I have friends that I've been friends with since the 6th or 7th grade. So they're essentially my family. I've known them most of my life. So, and they step in the gaps when sometimes my family may not. So that's what I would consider my family or my community.
Yeah, and it's amazing how your community gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, I see Crystal, good name, Crystal. I love to meet my name twins, and we spell our name correctly. Thank you very much. I love to, parents, your children, your siblings, your friends, your community, all of those folks who you have established meaningful connections with. That community extends, when you start to think about it, it can be quite extensive in how you bring those people into your legacy. It can have such a profound impact when you start thinking about how that circle of community just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. When you think about all the people whose lives you've touched and who've touched your lives. over the course of your life. So when we start thinking about legacy, these are the questions that we have to challenge ourselves to consider. How do you define wealth? How do you define wealth? Is wealth just money? Is wealth just things and property for you? Or is wealth health? Is wealth mental capacity? I think about, you know, I had my great grandmother who raised not just me, but all of us. My great grandmother passed away and she had Alzheimer's. And to watch her kind of go through that mental decline when she was at her, you know, at the depths of her Alzheimer's, that was tough. But when she had moments of clarity, she would, you know, always talk about, you know, she called me Doodle. Nobody else can call me Doodle but her and my grandma. But she called me Doodle, and she'd always say, Doodle, just take care of yourself. Just take care of yourself. And that's, you know, that's in my definition of wealth. Then when we think about wealth, how much is enough? When you think about your family and your community and your circle, how much is enough when you think about your wealth in terms of what the lifestyle that you want to live, but also the community and the lifestyle that you want to leave behind? How much is enough? Those are things that we have to think about. Who will share in your legacy? I think we all might have a story around, you know, somebody passes away, and unfortunately it brings out, in terms of financially anyway, it brings out the worst in people. It can bring out the worst in people. When you see people think about, you know, the first thing that they might think about when somebody passes away is, what did they leave me? Who's going to share in your legacy? Why might they share in your legacy, or why not? And have you articulated that, right? Like, it's one thing to write a will. It's another thing to leave bad will behind, right? There's a lot of things, you know, people, you know, we all should be thinking about an estate plan and what's going to in our wills, and how we define, you know, at least the property and the things that we want to leave for people. But there's also things to think about in terms, if you're not going to leave people things, think about why that might be, and think about who and how you might share that with others, so that you're not leaving bad will behind. Considering your legacy and thinking about what values and traditions are important to pass on. And I think that that's something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially my grandmother. My great grandmother passed away when I was in high school, but my grandmother passed away six years ago. And nobody knew how to make the dressing for Thanksgiving. Like, we had Thanksgiving and we all looked around like nobody knew grandma's recipes for the dressing for Thanksgiving, because we hadn't, well, one, she probably didn't want us in the kitchen when she was cooking, but like, that is a tradition. That is an important tradition that we have lost. And so for the past 6 years, I have been the designated like test cook, trying to put together that recipe so it can taste as close to mama's as it could. Hadn't quite gotten there, but last year's effort was the best one yet. But what are the values and traditions that are important to pass on? I saw a note in the chat about the pots. Let me tell you, that was the biggest thing for my family, is who was going to get my great grandmother's frying pan, her cast iron skillet, because it was seasoned just right. And we all wanted it. I got it. I didn't even say I had it, but I got it. And now it's funny, I've gotten it and I haven't used it because it's just too precious to me. And I just wanted to have it. It's the one thing that I got from my great grandmother. But yeah, it's the pots and pans of our lives that we want to think about how we pass those on. Anybody else want to share some traditions or values that they are that you need to make sure that gets to everyone?
I have a value. The building that I currently have a business in has been in the family for over 100 years. And at one time, we were considering renting the building to someone, but my mom lived next door. And I knew that she would not have, well, I put it like this, the renters would not have any peace with trying to rent her building. So we have chosen to continue to operate the building. And I really think that my mom, even though she is passed now, she is pleased that we chose to continue serving our community out of this building.
Yeah. That's special. That's special. And that story is special, Earlene. So it's not just the, you know, the values and the traditions, but it's the stories behind the values and traditions that are equally, if not more important. Because it's one thing to get the building and know and know, you know, it was part of your family, but to hear the story and how important it was and why it was important is so important to share too, because those stories are what pass down from generation to generation and keep those values and traditions alive. You know, I think, you know, now with modern technology, we all should be thinking about how we preserve the stories in our families and in our lives, because it's so easy to record them. Like, we're just sitting around right now and just think this is being live streamed, it's being recorded, we can go back and look at it. You know, think about opportunities to capture and record these stories of values and traditions that make up our values and traditions, and share those with others. I know all of us have 11,000 pictures on our phones. But what happens when we pass away? Does somebody know how to get in your phone? What's going to happen to those pictures? So, you know, are you printing them out? Are you putting them in some other kind of digital storage? Do people have access to that storage? Our digital footprints cast a much farther net than they used to. So we need to think about how we're going to capture these events in our lives that used to be printed and put it on an album, but now it's in a phone that, you know, it's one drop in the toilet away from being destroyed. So how do we get the access, and how do we continue to, you know, to pass on those values and traditions? Communication. How will you communicate your legacy? A legacy is only going to be as impactful as the people who know about it. So if you've got all these grand plans and thoughts and ideas about how you want to move your legacy forward after you're gone and no one knows about it, did it really happen, or can it really be accomplished? You know, there's the whole idea around kind of the will and the estate plan and that process, and making sure, you know, or the executor of your estate, or you know, whoever your trusted person in your family or circle that's going to be handling your affairs. It's really important for them to know, but it's also important for others who are going to be a part of that legacy, specifically if they're named, kind of what the meaning is behind that. When I wrote out my will, let me tell you, putting together my estate plan was like, I think that's the closest time to my husband and I ever getting a divorce, because we had very different ideas about kind of the way that we wanted to kind of handle things after we were gone. I wanted to be cremated. My husband wants to be buried. He wants me buried next to him. So you can automatically see how that's going to be a conflict. But it was, you know, once we got everything settled, then, you know, I made sure that both of us sat down and, you know, had intentional conversations with the people who we both named in the will, about what we were doing, but also the organizations in our philanthropy who we were going to leave things with for them in our will. I started like talking out loud. You know, I'll be 53 this year. I started talking, you know, my friends and I have started talking about what we want, you know, in terms of, you know, our last wishes, but even beyond that, about what are the things that are most meaningful to us, so that they can continue those stories of in telling and creating our legacies for others after we're gone. So, you know, it's the will and the estate plan and all of that stuff. All the paperwork is important, but you need to communicate what's in the paper. But you also need to make sure that you are expressing and talking about the things that are important to you about your legacy with others in your family, in your trusted circle, in your community. When you think about your legacy, it's not all the things that is going to happen after you're gone. What aspects of your legacy do you want to witness now? We set up, in terms of philanthropy, we set up a scholarship program that's named in our will. But we also wanted to, since we don't have children of our own, we also wanted to participate in, seeing students who are benefiting from scholarships now. So we included, that's a consideration for us in our current giving. We want to make sure, we want to see those students cross the stage. We want to see that they're graduating debt free. We want to experience the joy of seeing, future leaders graduate from Winston-Salem State University. So, think about what are the things that you want to do now to inform your legacy, not just after you're gone, but there's certain things that you may want to experience before then as well. And then, the last thing when you think about your legacy is, how do you want to be known and remembered? I always kid, but I'm not kidding. I know the exact picture that I want on my memorial service. And this is just a small, silly example, but I want my high school dance team photo where I was able to get down and do a split, and I had a calf muscle that you would not believe. I want that picture to be there. And I want people to remember that she loved to dance, and she was silly, and she was athletic at some point, even though you might not have known that looking at her now. But she was also very involved in, student activities at her alma mater. She was very involved in helping nonprofits and helping others, figure out how they wanted to be known and remembered. So think about all of the ways that you want to be known and remembered, and how that can impact, the legacy decisions or the decisions that you're making right now. So I'll stop right there and ask, what other things do you think about when you think about your legacy and how you want to be remembered, and what you need to do in order to move that legacy forward?
I think about the things that I currently have. So I have the Circle of Joy, which is a collective giving model. And I think about what will happen to that. I know I haven't said it out loud, like what my intentions are, but I mean, I just don't want it to be dissolved.
Right.
As you say this, I think, oh, well, I should think about that. I think about how I want to be a legacy donor at my alma mater, because I love my school. I feel like I went to FAM, I bleed orange and green. I want to make sure that, that is something that I do. And I also want to make sure that, to your point of not sharing, if you don't share it, nobody knows. I am single. I don't have any kids. So like, if I don't share what I want, I don't want like some random cousin, like, well, I'm going to take it because Joy liked me the best. And if I never say it to anybody, nobody will really know. So I have to communicate probably my legacy. I am also a person that I have older parents. I haven't had it's scary to talk about death and legacy and all that stuff. So you have to be intentional. You have to be, but you also know you want, when people are healthy, to have conversations, when they're in their right mind, to be able to have the conversations, as opposed to when it's like danger, and, everybody has all the emotions. My mother was given the blessing of my grandmother basically telling her everything she wanted to what she was wearing and what hat she wanted to be buried in. And so what she has shared with me is that you're going to be emotional, Joy, but if you don't have to worry about the logistics and those types of things, and what the intention was or how they want to be remembered, it's a lot easier to manage it, even though it's going to be hard regardless.
That is so true, Joy. And one of the things that, I always talk about, and I have to remind myself too, is when you need a will, it's too late, right? Like if you wait until you need a will or to outline your plans, When you need that to happen, it's already too late. So, these are the conversations and the things that we need to do now, because while you are able to state your intention and like when you are able to make sure that people hear you and understand, I can't tell you how devastating, and I'm sure all of us have our own stories about situations where you didn't have it. Everything happened unplanned. Everything was out of your control. The timing of things, it's never a good time, but things happen unexpectedly, and you didn't have the opportunity to hear from the person what they wanted or what mattered or what cared about them and how they wanted their legacy to move forward once they were gone. So it is so important to have those conversations now while we can have them before it's too late. And I mean, I'll share the estate planning conversation was so difficult for us. It's because my husband is also someone who is, David has had a very traumatic life. David was orphaned at 3. His mom, and he didn't know it at the time, but his adopted dad, he was in a car. They had a car accident on Christmas Eve. His parents both died, and the other people in the other vehicle died as well. And so at 3 years old, he was orphaned, and he, fortunately he was taken in and was under the care of his mother's parents, growing up. And so talking about, dying and death and all of that is very, very traumatic for him. But I think it would have been even, in the conversation that we had to have, is it would be even more traumatic had he, if we don't have this conversation now, and he had to think about, to put his emotions aside, try to put his emotions aside to try to take care of things in a traumatic situation. So these aren't easy conversations. We have to be sensitive about it, which is why it's so important to have these conversations now, but also to have these conversations coming from a place of things you want to see while you're alive. Things you want to see while you're alive, so you can make sure that you're addressing those things now. And sometimes that can lead to an easier conversation about things that you want to see happen after you're gone. So when we start thinking about, let me go this way. Why can't I? There we go. When we start thinking about planning, and this is where, I start, putting my hat on about, okay, we got to do the stuff, y'all. We got to put the papers, we got to see the people, but sometimes it's hard to even kind of sit down and figure out what you want to do next. So, the first thing I always say is this is a great time, and figure out time, set aside time for yourself to think about your intention and your vision, just to reflect. Just think about what do I want to see? How do I define my legacy? What does wealth mean to me? Who are those trusted people in my circle? And just spend some time reflecting and setting your intention and vision. And we'll get to that in a moment. And when it comes to legacy planning, you need to set goals, because it can be a lot. It can be overwhelming. But if you set goals about, make a list, prioritize the things that are most important to you, and then set goals around making those, and set goals around, how best to accomplish those. And when I say set goals, I mean set goals, like set some deadlines for yourself. Figure out, by when and with whom you want to have different conversations. But it really is important to at least make a list, set some goals, and prioritize. The third thing you want to do is you want to build your toolkit, and you want to think about, okay, what do I need? And this isn't even just, this goes beyond just, I need to go talk to an attorney, or I need to go talk to a CPA, but it might be, I need to go talk to someone at my alma mater, because I need to understand what some of the options are for the way that I want to give now and after I'm gone. It might be thinking about, okay, succession planning for my business. Who do I need to bring into that conversation? Are they prepared? Do I need to start mentoring my successor? Think about all of the resources and the people that you're going to need to involve and how you're going to engage them and think about your toolkit. And then just you have to work the plan. You have to assess and adjust, and as your life circumstances change, you have to change what that means in terms of your plans and your goals and your priorities. I think there's this misperception sometimes that once we get the will and the power of attorney and all of those things in place, all right, we're done with the legacy plan. But as you all know, things happen, life happens, and you have to go back and reassess and readjust. I'm on my aunt and my uncle right now because they just had their 4th grandkid and they haven't changed their will since they had their first child. So what is, just that basic updates and from a planning perspective, not to mention, over the course of your life, your priorities and things that you care about are going to change. So make sure that this is a dynamic process. It's not a static process. So you want to just keep thinking about working the plan, reassessing and adjusting is needed. So the next thing I want to talk about, so the first thing I said is reflection, setting your intention and vision. And one of the things that has become really, I think has really kind of challenged me in my thinking is when people say, well, you got to set your intention. Well, what does that even mean? Like when we start thinking about intention and vision, it's, well, what do we mean when we think about that in terms of planning? So I want to spend a couple of minutes just thinking about intention and vision and what that is and how that informs this whole legacy planning and not even legacy planning, but just generally, how that informs how we approach things. So again, I love me a quote. So here's a proverb that I love. A vision without a plan is just a dream. A plan without a vision is just drudgery. But a vision with a plan can change the world. So we can make a vision and, that's great. But if we don't have something to stand behind it and what we're actually going to do, we're just dreaming. And just working without like a goal and a hope for the future, well, that's just working. But if we put our vision and our plan in place, we really can change the world. So when we think about intention and vision, what do we mean? So when I say intention, when we set our intention, it's saying, hey, I know what I want to do, but I don't have a direction. I know that I feel like I'm going to set my intention around starting a successful business, but I don't know what it's going to take for me to get there. So that is kind of when you set your intention, that's the first stage in making things happen in actualization. And then your vision is, well, I can see where I'm going. I have really stated goals, but I just need the tools to be able to get there. So when you think about intention and vision, think about it in terms of you have somewhere that you want to go. I intend to go get some ice cream. I'm in a foreign and somebody drops you in the middle of a strange town. I want ice cream. Well, you know what you want. You intend to go get some ice cream, but you have no idea how to get there. So that vision, that's your intention, is to get the ice cream. That vision is, all right, I need to navigate my way to get that ice cream. I see myself going to get that ice cream, but I have no tools on how to navigate. The vision is, okay, I need a map. I need a rental car. I need all of these things that are going to help you get to your ice cream are the tools that you need. Your vision is having the ice cream. You can see it just as clear as day. Me, I'm a mint chocolate chip person. I can see me getting that ice cream, but I need to figure out how I'm going to get there. So that's setting your intention of, you know what you want to do, but you have no idea how to do it. And your vision is setting the goals, but you don't know the tools that you need to make it happen. So, and thinking about that in terms of legacy planning, that whole idea of building your toolkit building your toolkit. You set your intention by creating what you want, but building your toolkit is building the tools for your vision and how you're going to make sure that it happens. So think about like your intention when you leave this conversation today. What do you intend to have? What do you intend in terms of around your legacy? And then your vision is thinking about building your toolkit. What are the resources that you're going to need in order to accomplish those goals that you're going to get to? And then the last thing I'll just say around all of this is it's a journey. It's a journey. You have where you are today and what you know. And then you know where you kind of want to be, and you want to be doing this thing or have this thing, you want to feel this way about it. But everything that happens in between is a mess. And it's not going to be a straight line. And you're going to have to try some things and fail at some things and do some different things. But you have to start somewhere. And hopefully this conversation today is going to be the catalyst for helping you start to think about some of those things. And how you get from where you are today and where you want to be, and think about who are the people that you need to involve in this conversation. What are the tools that you need to add to your toolkit? Where do you even want to start? All of those things, it's a process. And so I don't want anyone to leave here feeling overwhelmed that you have to do all of this tomorrow. I just want you to know that I want you to just think about some of the things that we talked about today, how that's applicable to your life and what your first next step might be. So I'll stop there and I'll just open it up. I'm going to see if I unfortunately couldn't do the chat at the same time, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I couldn't do the chat at the same time, but Crystal, no one ever wants to talk about the things and like these things. What are some of what's some of the pushback that you get when you want to start having these conversations? And feel free to put it in the chat. And if anybody wants to come off mute, you can do that too.
Shonce, I see your hand is raised. I don't know if it's intentional or not.
It was raised earlier when you were talking, when y'all were talking, Joy, was talking about you were saying that, you hadn't thought about, you haven't even told anybody those conversations, about like what you should do. And I raised my hand because I was like, it's not even just telling them, it's like, it got to be enshrined, somewhere within a will, because that was something that prior to my grandmother's passing, like I was pressing on her. I don't care if you want somebody to have a sheet, like it need to be written down, like, and I kept having those conversations, and I could tell that she got kind of like, eerie about it. But I had talked to my family. I'm like, next time I come down here, I'm getting a lawyer, and I talked to people, and that was like August, right around her birthday. And then she passed that October, right before I got there. And so all those things that I thought was going to happen, like, I'm going to get this suit, I'm going to take this quilt, I'm going to do this, you know what I'm saying? It's like you always think you got more time. And I'm not saying that in any way on you. It's just like, even telling some people sometimes isn't enough, because people are like, oh, well, I don't know. I'll give you an example. I have a friend who, her father passed, and her father and his wife had not been married in like over probably 40 years. He had other women in between there, but they never officially got divorced. He owned a business. He never wanted to be cremated, any of that. When he died, she went and took his business, sold everything out of it. Like literally they had not been together in like 40 years, sold everything out of it and cremated him. And like even his children didn't. And she was just like, whatever y'all say, I'm making a decision. And it's just like all of those things that if it was enshrined somewhere of what his wishes were, things that turned out better. And those are all of the bad examples, but it's the good too. Like I said about pots, because I invested in some Le Creuset pots. some years ago. And I like every time somebody say something, my husband put in the dishwasher, I'm like, you gotta don't put my pot in the dishwasher because that's my son, that's my Amari, those his pots for him and his wife. You know, so I started thinking about now as I'm getting older about things that can be passed on for generations. Because I have my grandma's cast iron skillets in her Dutch oven, and I use them regularly every day.
Yeah, it's so interesting, kind of how the perception of kind of what's going to happen when you pass away versus the reality. I had like, and especially like, yeah, there's there's this misperception that, well, we don't have anything. No, actually, like what you're sitting on is a thing, and that's going to go somewhere, and somebody's going to dictate. If you don't dictate what happens to it, somebody else is going to dictate what happens to it, and it's a state by state decision, right? Like there's a law, there's like whole statutes written around this stuff, and that situation that you just described, Shantae, is something that more people have experienced than not, or they're just like, oh, well, my kids are just going to get everything, or my wife is just going to get everything. And the reality is, well, that may be the case, but depending on where you live, that might not be the case. So, you need to be very intentional around making sure that you understand where your stuff is going to go. If you want it to go somewhere special, then you need to understand, you need to, like you said, memorialize and enshrine that with those wishes, because somebody else will. I can't even tell you, before Christmas, I had a story, a friend of mine had a story exactly like that, where her dad and her mom and her dad were now going through a situation where they were trying to move things out of his estate so he could qualify for Medicaid because he needed extensive care. And he had all these businesses and things in his name, but come to find out, he was still legally married to his first wife and had kids with her. So the second wife, this is his like second wife, but it's common law. It's not even like girlfriend. There is no common law in the state where she lives in. We saying it's common law, but there is actually no common law statute where they live. And so they can't even do anything with those properties and those businesses while he's still alive to help take care of him, because ultimately that wife and those kids are in that line of succession. So it's like there are stories I have heard and seen them all. And let me just say, it's not just Black folks. It's like there are stories that we all need to, think and be aware of. And transitions are tough. And talking about this is tough. But it's those situations, Crystal, like in your example, it's like, we're not dying tomorrow. Everything's going to be okay. But, it doesn't have to be a conversation about death. It can be a conversation as simple as like my girlfriends and I, when we were just going through, talking about old times and, how you used to cut up back in the day. And that's when I just kind of mentioned about my high school tight knot picture. That's what I wanted. Like, it wasn't a conversation specifically about death. It was just bringing those conversations to light, like bringing my wishes to light in the course of other conversations. Like, girl, like all of my, like I actually still have the original like Keith Sweat and Al B. Sure and like all those old tapes. Like I actually have those, and not that anybody would want those, but in case somebody does, girl, you make sure you get my CDs and my tapes, right? Like, so it's that kind of thing that you can express. You need to have intentional conversations, definitely. But there are certain things, especially when it comes to memorabilia, keepsakes, things that have special meaning and value that you want to give to other people. There's ways to bring that up in just casual, everyday conversation and make your wishes known. And then you can go and write it down on a piece of paper somewhere, like in your will, so that it gets delivered to whoever you want it to. Crystal, 3 small children. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And that's the other thing is like, do you know, like when you have kids involved, have you expressed like what happens in a scenario when there's kids involved? What if both parents are deceased? What happens? And there's this assumption, like we write wills, like that was one of the hardest things about our will too. Even though we don't have children, we had to make the decision about what would happen when whichever one of us went first. And it's not even a matter of which one of us passes away first. It's what if one or both of us at the same time, there's a capacity issue. What if we are in a car crash and both of us are incapacitated? What happens in those situations? And it varies how that can occur state by state too. So, you know, to the extent that you have access to good legal advice, get it. But most importantly, talk about these things, because you do not want your children, to be put into a situation where you have no control over what happens because you've not expressed that situation. So I think we're like 5 minutes to the hour. Is there anything else that anybody wants to share, or are there any questions that I can answer for anybody about next steps or, you know, experience or philanthropy in terms of legacy?
No, but this has been some very informative information, you know, giving me something to think about.
Well, I'm glad. And I hope these conversations continue. But then once you get through this reflection stage, go to step 2. It's important, and work your plan and make your list. But I'm glad. And again, I'm happy. My contact information, I think you have my email address through the invite. But please feel free to reach out. Like I said, I have, I can help think through some things you might want to consider. I'm happy to be a thought partner as you start thinking about philanthropy. Happy to answer any questions there as well. But think about it, and don't just think about it, but find opportunities and put your plan together and act on it too, because it's too important.
Crystal had one more question. I see, as a founder of Spirit Women, do I need to write a will? And I think that's kind of like, if you have a business, like, what's the succession plan? I'm gonna give that to Crystal. I'm assuming that that's a yes, because you got to have your intentions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say this: you need to have a will, regardless. You need to have a will regardless. I don't care how much you think you own, or how much you actually do own, or how much a value you assign to it. You need to have a will regardless. When it comes to succession planning for your business, that actually needs to be, I would say, or for your nonprofit, you actually need to think through it doesn't need to be a separate legal document, but you need to draft a succession plan for your nonprofit if you want it to continue after you're gone. And then you need to start thinking about all of the different scenarios about what that could look like. If you were to pass away today, if you were to pass away, unexpectedly 10 years from now, or if you live your full healthy life and pass away naturally, what you would want to happen. And even more important for a succession plan for a nonprofit or a business is you want to make sure that you have aligned all of the appropriate parties and communicated what those wishes are so they can move forward. It's one thing to say, I want you to run the nonprofit. It's another thing to say, I want you to run the nonprofit, and here are the values in the vision and the mission that I have for the nonprofit when I'm no longer here.
Hi, I've been on driver's mode, so I can't find the chat. So sorry, but I've been listening intently. Thank you. I just wanted to say, one, I am originally from Winston-Salem, so hey girl, hey. And
hey.
I just want to say this was so helpful. I think it's a conversation we don't hear enough in our community. And I think we've all seen it with our families, where after someone passes, we're all scrambling, and then that's when the fights and things start breaking out, and it gets really ugly. And so I just want to say thank you for taking the time to gather this information. And I hope it's somewhere where the PowerPoint and things like that are somewhere where we can access them later. Because I just personally found this to be very helpful. I didn't think about, like, what does happen to all the stuff in the phone? Like, I don't even know my husband's phone passwords, right? Which I'm sure he likes it that way. But if something happens, there's probably stuff in his phone that I need to get to. So I just appreciate you bringing these things to the forefront of our mind. And so thank you for your time.
Well, I appreciate that. And listen, digital asset security that's a whole nother hour-long session. Like, it's something that we don't think about. But if you were to pass away tomorrow, if the only online, and I'll just say this and then I'll stop, but the only company right now that builds in an opportunity for you to name who has access to your data and information on the cloud is Apple, if you have an Apple phone. But you also have to do it. If you don't do it, they own your stuff, and nobody can get it for you. So you need to make sure that you are clear and intentional about your digital asset succession, because they don't just give out your Facebook password or your Instagram password or your, all that stuff that you've just been saving online. Yeah, you just because it's named in your will, your executor, they still don't have access to it. It has to be specifically named for that person to specifically access your information. So data security is a big thing. That's why if you don't do anything else after you leave here today, get a piece of paper and write down all your passwords, put them in a secure place that somebody that you trust knows about, more than one person actually. Put it in a secure place that they know about, lock it up. So if something happens, you can get access to things, or they can get access to things, because that's a huge issue. I have seen like crypto in my work. There was a gentleman who had billions of dollars in crypto, and nobody could get it because nobody had access to his wallet. Mm-hmm. Now, that's an extreme example. But the more simplistic and likely scenario is the one I talked about with the pictures. Like, I would be devastated if I did not have access to all the pictures that I have in my phone. So you need to make sure that you do that. So if you don't do anything else, make sure you take care of that. And with that, thank you, y'all. I appreciate
so
you.
Good. Thank you.
I'm happy to continue the conversation. If you have questions, reach out.
So I would like to thank you personally for, coming in and joining us in the Sage Circle, and thank everybody who has come on today. We do this every month on the 4th Thursday of the month. And follow Southern Black Girls and Women's Consortium on IG, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. We are gauging up for a great conference in Atlanta, Georgia on the 7th and the 8th of June. So coming soon for all Black girls and women. So please follow us, like us, all those things. And this will be sent back to you all, so you'll get the actual recording. And if you have not joined our Mighty Network, you can also get the PowerPoint. We'll get that, make sure you all get all this stuff, but join our Mighty Network to stay engaged and connected to our ecosystem of Black women and Black girls throughout the 13 Southern states. We appreciate you, and